probably been in a similar scenario like this. You start up a movie at home, or you go to your local theater, and sometime during the film, or even immediately, someone decides to whip out their phone. Yes, well, technically you're not supposed to have phones out in the movie theater, but not like that stops most teenagers. You ask why the phone is out and why they can't watch the film, and the person replies, "I'm bored." It could be the most intriguing film known to mankind, and yet the person claims they are bored. Why and how would that be the case? That is the subject of today's video on what makes a film really truly boring. At the end of the day, I hope this video essay answers an important question. Is the film truly boring, or is the attention span just bad? And now, a word from our sponsor. Well, technically, 20th Century Dude doesn't have any sponsors for this channel. However, there are a few things that you can throw your support at. For one, physical media has been on the decline for the past several years, which is probably purposeful because of the way media companies are nowadays. So you can go out and do your civic duty and collect everything on Blu-ray or DVD, or if you wanted to go antique, Laserdisc or VHS, go out and buy physical media. Collect stuff that you really love, or even things that you only maybe sort of like. Because the day is coming when everything that is online will soon come to a crashing halt, and you won't be able to access things such as medical records, or access Google, or even watch movies. You will not be able to do any of those online when the day comes that everything will possibly come crashing down to the ground during the apocalypse. So, do your civic duty, collect everything on a physical reference, download your records and print them out as a physical reference, because honestly, you never know when you're going to need the physical reference. Now, on for our main programming. Don't touch the dot. Honestly, I kind of hate it when people use boring as an excuse for why they don't like a movie. There's a lot of good movies, especially from the past, that are overlooked now because they are considered too boring for some reason. I've heard reasons such as it's too talky, as if a film containing a discussion between several people for a few minutes is bad for some reason, or if it's in black and white they won't watch it because it's considered boring. That's an excuse I really hate. Or that it's slow paced, which is the main reasoning I want to get behind today. Honestly, I'd have to disagree with those excuses. I seldom get bored with movies, and the ones I do get bored with are not because they're slow paced. It actually goes a lot deeper than that. It has to do with a lack of tension, character choices, poor editing choices, no hook. I suppose an example to start out with is a film I genuinely consider boring, is a film from the early 1980s starring Christopher Plummer and John Savage called The Amateur. I'm guessing many of you have probably never heard of this film, which is fine. It's not really a major film by any means. It contains most of the problems I already listed, except for starting out with a good hook, and yeah, it actually does start out pretty decently for the first 20 or so minutes. It does suffer, however, from poor pacing after a while. It's supposed to be an action movie, but yet it feels like nothing happens for long stretches of time. The characters aren't the most terribly fascinating either, though at least Savage's character starts out with some kind of motivation to keep going throughout the rest of the story. But ultimately, the reason it might not feel like anything really happens in the movie is due to a lack of exciting tension, which, of course, tension can be used in the form of suspense and uncertainty, but there's other problems such as a poor pace and other details which I'll dive into very shortly. I haven't seen this film in a couple years, but when it comes to films I consider genuinely boring, this is one that usually springs to my mind almost immediately because it's such an easy example to use. A film can't be boring if it's naturally a slow burn. A slow burn can be good for a movie, but it can often be more than that, underlying a deeper problem. First off, a film can only be boring if the audience doesn't care about any of the characters. It can come down to whether they can't relate to a protagonist's decisions, their backstory, or feel that their arc truly matters in the grand scheme of things. If characters in a story, especially the main character, feel forgettable and not really engaging, it can heavily damage the story beyond repair. Sometimes a good character will often need a death or complexity or flaw for the audience or reader to relate to them and their reasoning behind their decisions. This can also help if the audience feels the need to project their traits into a given movie, TV show, audiobook, video game, etc. If the character has a fear of bats, for example, then people who also share a fear of bats have something to relate to. If the protagonist hates specific types of people or loves watching one genre of film, or loves cooking, for example, there may be something for people who have traits in both those areas to relate to. Not to mention, characters will need to experience a pivotal arc, whether it's overcoming a fear, or defeating an evil power so great, or embarking on a very long quest to achieve a singular, attainable, but also relatable goal. If it feels like characters don't learn anything or achieve a goal by the end of a film, then why should people care about them? Luke Skywalker from the original Star Wars trilogy, or Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, or Tony Stark from Iron Man 1 are probably some good examples of this. As far as relatable characters who ultimately achieve a necessary goal, or complete a difficult task, or learn to become a better human being and ultimately learn something about themselves along the way. That's why those protagonists resonate so well for audiences, and still will generations from now. If Dorothy or Luke or Tony weren't relatable characters that didn't undergo a crucial story arc, then why would people care about them? If there wasn't something about the three of them that resonated with audiences, then that would kind of hinder all of those stories. An unrelatable or bad character can make a film boring, because people won't care about the characters in the story to want to continue onward. Starting the movie with a hook is very crucial to telling a story. It can come down to a singular piece of dialogue.
I believe in America. America has made my fortune. And I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her never to dishonor her family.
The tone of the music. Or a beautifully or interestingly composed shot.
I was the third brother of five, doing whatever I had to do to survive. I'm not saying what I did was all right. Trying to break out of the ghetto was a day-to-day fight. Being down so long, yet nothing didn't cross my mind. But I knew there was a better way of life, and I was just trying to find. You don't know what you do till you put it.
Or it can come down to starting the movie off with a very unusual or enigmatic prologue or narration.
It began with the forging of the Great Rings. 3 were given to the elves, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings. 7 to the dwarf lords, great miners and craftsmen of the mountain halls. And 9 rings were gifted to the race of men who, above all else, desire power.
If the audience isn't immediately brought into the film in a way that's going to intrigue them, why should they continue on with the story? That's also a possibility as to why a film might be considered boring. There's nothing to engage the audience's interest to begin with. This is a point that I'm surprised nobody brings up when talking about films that are supposedly boring. Ultimately, editing can make or break your movie. A good director, and editor for that matter, are supposed to know the exact rhythm of a scene, whether it's a car chase or just a scene where 2 characters are having a discussion. Brian De Palma is a director that purposely shoots for the edit, which is a trait of his that he does really well. It's even been said that a great edit is the one you don't see. Anyway, it's crucial to know for a specific moment whether to take a breather and slow down, like the train scene from Spirited Away, or, well, the really sad scene from Up, or when to kick things back into gear, which is something that pretty much happens for most of Mad Max Fury Road. If a movie feels like continuity of a scene has been broken multiple times, or the pacing feels uneven, then that's attributed to bad editing, which also contributes to the audience's potential interest in a film fading away. Also, if a scene feels dragged out and without purpose, then that can also be attributed to bad editing. This should be a pretty obvious one. A lot of movies nowadays can certainly learn from this old cinematic trick that seldom feels used nowadays. By creating tension, filmmakers can hold the audience's attention and make the experience thrilling, memorable, and downright exciting. That can come in the form of suspense, like in many Hitchcock films, or stakes being raised or suddenly changed due to a plot twist in a movie. But if there's no impact from dramatic tension in a movie, again, why should audiences care? I suppose lastly, age also plays a factor as to why a movie might be considered boring. I think for me as a kid, time seemed to move at a slower rate than what it does now, and the things that interest a kid are not quite the same as what interests an adult. And yes, taste can mature over time as well. I don't expect a 5-year-old kid to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey or Star Trek: The Motion Picture, as I could expect them to watch SpongeBob for countless hours or even just watch the Cars movies instead. It is hopeful that over time a person's attention span can also improve, especially with older age, as we constantly don't need to feel engaged by every little thing. I suppose with the advent of social media and these TikToks that some people literally can't live without for 5 minutes, or, changing reels and videos every 10 seconds, then maybe that won't be the case someday. Ultimately, if a slow film is considered boring, in that case, most movies are kind of boring then. So if we're to apply that logic, I really hope that we can stop using boring as an excuse for why someone is not interested in something like a slow-paced film. We have so many good films that are slow-paced. A Fistful of Dollars, No Country for Old Men, The Postman Always Rings Twice, East of Eden, and so many more. Not every film needs to go a mile a minute after all. Again, a film can only be boring if there's no tension, the characters are not relatable, there's nothing to hook the audience in, or if the editing is horrible and inconsistent, causing a horrible pace. Any other reason is simply just a bad attention span. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you for tuning into this video. Stay tuned for more 20th Century Dude content along the way, and hope to catch you on the fly. See ya.